All right, so we're gonna get started in a couple more seconds. Looks like we got a question. We will get to your question on the chat. So we'll be covering that part today as well. All right, we'll get started. Okay, so we want to welcome those of you who are here this wonderful, beautiful morning. Feels like summer already, guys. That's awesome. So welcome to our beading workshop. This is the first time that we've done this type of workshop before. Our last workshop was a hoop workshop. We're hoping to do that one again, but we're so happy to be here and to do this beautiful Saturday. Yay! So this is a 2-day workshop. Today is the first day. It'll be from 11 to 1, and then we'll do it again. Hopefully you guys will be able to start some beadwork later this week, and then come back on May 8th. And we believe that it may be shorter, but we're so excited. All right. My computer is so touchy. Sorry, guys. All right. So we're able to do this through the Urban Indian Center and through a grant that's called our Native Connections Grant. It is such a great grant for us to have here at the Urban Indian Center. What it is it's meant to help prevent and reduce suicidal behavior, substance abuse, and the impact of trauma, and then to promote mental health among Native American Alaska Native youth through the ages 10 to 24. We really, here at the Urban Indian Center, we really like to show that we're here to support you mental health wise. We have counseling here. We also have substance use services and referral services, case management, also education, support, and cultural events. And these are one of our events. So our team consists of Christina Groves. She's a LCSW and a behavioral health director here at the Urban Indian Center. And then me, I'm April Yazzie. I'm an ACMHC, so a clinical therapist, and I mostly work with youth. And then we have Erin Greenberg, who is also on. She's a SAMHSA Native Connections admin assistant, and she's the one who makes things work and run. So we're so happy to have her as well. Again, this is our agenda, and just to welcome all of you here. We're so excited to bring in some talented people to teach us some beading. I did an introduction to our Native Connections grant. Right now we're going to do a short survey. It's just one question, so we would love for all of you to participate in this survey, and Erin will bring that up for us. So we just love to have everybody vote and get 100%. All right, we got 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, hit 100. It's awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for participating in our short survey. We'll do another one at the end as well. So keep an eye out for that one as well. Okay, now we'll move to some Zoom etiquette. So just to be respectful, some do's. If you do choose to turn on your your video, just make sure that you're appropriately dressed and that you're in a good space to do so. Also, we would like that you put your name up. You don't have to put your full name. Actually, we'd just prefer your first name. And then mute is going to be your friend, and it's our friend as well. We want to make sure that we respect other people who are on this Zoom meeting and that we can be able to focus on the skill that we're about to learn. And then please just use an appropriate Zoom background. You are welcome to raise your hand or wait to be called on if you have a question, or you can put a comment in the chat. And then also, as a sign of respect, we also want to make sure that we're nice to others on this Zoom meeting. Please don't take pictures or record this meeting without express permission. We will make this Zoom meeting available to you after we're done, because we know that there's going to be a lot of things that you are going to learn that are new. And so it's important to have that video readily available to you if you need a reference. And then please, if you do turn on your camera, don't walk around with the camera. And then please use the chat for appropriate conversations and no side conversations. And then having a conversation while your mute is off, and holding household members off camera, like conversations, background conversation, it really distracts all of us. So just out of respect, please be aware of that. And then just while you're here, we want you to be focused and be here as well. All right, sorry, man, my computer is just super touchy. Okay, some of the materials that you will need, we provided you with a bomb of thread. We have your loom, some sewing needles. I think they're size 12 needles. And then Erin will jump in, probably correct me anytime. We also provided a glover's needle and then some tacky glue. And then Erin, can you please show us some of the beads that we also provided?
Yeah, so here's some beads. Hold on. I don't know if you can see this, but so here's the white colored beads that you'll have, and then you'll have some red colored beads as well. And then you also have some blue ones, turquoise blue, and then some yellow.
Sweet. Thank you, Erin. All right, so hopefully those are all the materials you do need. And yeah, so if you don't have these materials, there's a lot of places that you could go get them. First of all, you can order them on Amazon. And then also the trading posts or other areas, other places as well, like sewing. All right, let's move on. So here we have today is Al and Amanda Groves. They are such wonderful people and very, very talented and skilled. I will let them introduce themselves, but I know that we have their tribes up here. And then let's see, Northern Ute and Hopi tribes. So we're so excited to have you, Al and Amanda Groves. Go ahead and take it away. I will stop sharing.
Okay, thank you. We're excited to be here. Before we start, I would like our participants, if you can just introduce yourself. It would be awesome to know who's here. So if you can maybe just go one at a time. I'll just call on you. Let me ask Carter. Carter Small Canyon. Introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? Those type of ideas, please.
Hi, I'm Carter Small Canyon. I'm a Navajo, and I just joined this class because I wanted to learn how to bead better and use a loom. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Awesome, thank you. That's plenty. And I would love it if while you're talking, if you would just show us your face. And here's why. I know that I'm a teacher and I've been doing Zoom classes and whatever for so long now. But so much of, me and my wife were having a conversation about this morning. So much of these ideas have to do with relationships. They have to do with creating relationships with people, and that's how culture is passed on, right? This is an activity that can help us create relationships that are important. And so I think seeing your face would be awesome in this effort for us to create a relationship with you. So I would really appreciate that. Jacqueline Shirley, can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Tiano. I'm actually on my mom's account with the Zoom. I'm Navajo, and I just want to learn how to bead.
Awesome. We're here for you. Can you show us can you turn your camera on for a second? I'd just like to see your face. I guess you don't have to if you're like just woke up or something, but like that way, if we see you out in the world, that I can say hello to you.
I don't see the camera option.
All right, you can, whenever you want, you can do that. I guess if you want later on. Kyla, can you introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kayla. I'm Navajo and I kind of just wanted to learn how to bead.
So I'm checking, sorry, I'm going to interrupt here, but I'm checking to see if they have camera and it doesn't look like it. So.
Okay, that's fine.
Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go with Melissa. Melissa, will you introduce yourself, please?
It's Silas and Solomon. We're both Navajo. We're from Utah. And we just wanted to learn how to bead.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Mike.
Hello, I'm the old guy, Mike Gritteni. I work for Washington County School District, Title VI. And I think Charlene and I got permission to just pop in and watch and learn because we want to host a beading family night with our Title VI program down in St. George, Utah. So I'm here to steal ideas.
Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. Is that Veronica? Did we do Veronica? Okay, Veronica, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Shanago. I'm calling in from the Bay Area. I work at the Native American Health Center out here on Muskogee Creek. I'm really excited to learn from you and be in this space together. So got all my materials set up, and yeah, thank you for having this.
Thank you for coming, and I appreciate everybody introducing yourself. Hopefully it'll make it a little bit more personal. I wanted to not make it like a conference. I wanted to make it, I don't know, like a beading circle, I guess is what we're looking for, is the feeling. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and then I'll introduce myself, is for this first part, I would love it if you would log in to this Nearpod. If you go to nearpod.com, maybe you can, if you're on your computer, you can split screens, or if you want to type in the chat, and maybe one of us can keep track of the chat while we're going, you can maybe type some answers in the chat. So you just go to nearpod.com and you just type in this code right here, and it lets you participate in this conversation with us. And it's really a good interactive way that we can do these things together. And so I just wanted to introduce, while you're doing that, if you, that would be, it would just make it so much better if you can log into that. That would be awesome. While you're doing that, I just thought we would introduce ourselves. So my name is Alan Groves. I am the son of Jay Groves, who's Northern Ute and from Eastern Utah, and Jeannie Groves, who's Hopi from Northeastern Arizona. And this is my wife, Amanda, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Amanda Groves, Goodrich Groves. I'm originally from Oregon. I don't have any tribes to introduce. Actually, I've sort of been lucky enough to learn about beading and some of these things just through women who've been willing to share that with me. And so we're excited to teach you what we know today.
Yeah, so that's us. And anytime if you have a question, you can type in the chat, or you can actually, this is kind of a small group. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's at any time during the presentation, you can do that. It's better that way. So the first idea. So I thought I'd share my journey in Native American art, and I'm a beadwork and quillwork artist, and I do stuff and I sell pieces or whatnot, but also recently me and some artist colleagues started an art collective called Turtle Island Art Collective. And we have really tried to take on a active role in sharing culture through art. And that's really one of the things that has really helped me figure out what it means to be an artist, but also what it means to be, for me, to be Native American and have a way to participate in. So I thought I'd share some of these ideas as we go through before we get started. And really kind of the big takeaway, I think it's awesome to participate in art, especially Indigenous art. But what I have found personally myself is that the biggest benefit is this idea of shaping identity and shaping who you are and what decisions you make. That Indigenous art has really helped me figure that out in my life. I grew up in a primarily urban area, and so I know that my parents, in an effort to help us get education, to help us set us up for success in our lives, they put us in a place where they felt like would be best for us. But because I grew up in a mostly urban area, a lot of the connections that I think I could have made stronger living around some of my relatives on the res or whatnot, I didn't really get a chance to make those as strong as I maybe would have hoped looking back on my life. And so some of those things I had anticipated learning from my relatives or from the community, I've had to seek out on my own, and art has been a way that I've been able to do that. So I just thought we'd go through some ideas first. So like I said, this is me, and this is two of our daughters, this is at a powwow, and we really have tried to help them participate in culture in a way, in an effort to help them figure out who they are and what being Native American means to them. And both of us equally, both me and my wife have really taken part in helping them do that. I hope you find in your Native American community that being a member of your community is what you can contribute to your community. That's really the most important idea. Not necessarily blood quantum, not necessarily how you look, but what you can contribute to your community is valuable, and that's what makes you part of the community. All right, so I wanted to share really just 3 big ideas when it comes to what art has taught me. And it's these 3 ideas. 1 is to honor knowledge, and 2 is this idea of sliver beads, and 3 is the idea of points and barbs, and I'll explain those as I go through. But before we get started on that, I just wanted to explain this idea. Some of you at the beginning of your journey when it comes to participating in Indigenous art, some of you are maybe along the line a little bit. But one thing I've really noticed is that this idea that change is reciprocal. You can change things and things change you. And that's something that God taught to me right at the very beginning. I didn't realize that at the start, but it's something that is like, as I participate in art, it changes who I am. And I just put these 2 pictures up This top one is a picture of a Loomwork bracelet, one of the very first ones that I did, one of the very first ones that I made the pattern for it, that I chose colors that were significant to me. This is one of those first ones that I did. And it was important to me because it was ideas that have been passed on to me, ideas that I've been grown up in my home. My grandfather was a silversmith, and he started a silversmithing guild in the 1970s, 1980s, and his work was very prominent among the Hopi tribe and Hopi artists. And so I grew up having these images in my home, but what did they mean to me? It took me a while to figure that out. And then this bottom picture is a quill work bracelet that I made. And this was significant because this is a piece that we used to raise funds for a youth art workshop that our organization is holding. And this one is really me, right? So the top one is what I perceived art. The bottom one is how art has changed me on my journey so far. And this is an expression of myself, all aspects of me. And I can talk about that as go on, but that's one of the ideas that I really want you to walk away with today, is understand that you're not just making stuff. In fact, I'm kind of on a personal crusade to eliminate the crafts from Native arts and crafts, because it's not really crafts, it is art. There is meaning. There is, all of these ideas are present in our art that we make today. Just because it's not in a frame on the wall of a museum doesn't mean it's not significant and that it's not art. And so that's one of my personal missions in life, is to eliminate the crafts from the Native arts and crafts, right? All right. Okay, so I wanted to start each idea with maybe some wisdom. And so maybe you've heard of this idea before, this idea of the 7 generations, and many tribes have this idea, and they say it differently. So for every decision we make, we must consider the impact on the 7 generations. And whether that's 7 generations before and 7 generations behind, or whether the tribe believes that we're in the middle and there's 3 before and 3 behind, it kind of is the same idea, that what we do now, that your participation here today is going to have an impact on your future. And also, your ancestors' decisions have led you here to this moment in time. Whatever they have done has brought you to this point. And so just remembering that these things, when it comes to culture and art, are bigger than us. That's kind of this first idea I wanted to talk about. And because of that, I learned this idea of honoring knowledge, that what we know now comes from the past, and what we have, we can pass to our future. That the knowledge, like I said at the beginning, the relationships are key. That the person who taught me how to bead, I still have a relationship with. And that's really important to me. The relationship is probably more important than the art. But the art is what brought us together. And here's 2 examples on this slide that I thought of. So here are some Loomwork bracelets, similar to what we're teaching you today how to make. We made these for my Hopi relatives when my oldest son went to get his, have his name and blessing ceremony. So in Hopi culture, a new baby is born, and it stays in its home with its mother for 30 days. For 30 days, nobody comes over, people don't see this baby. It just spends time creating relationship with its mother and its family, I guess. And then on the 30th day, they take this baby and they take it outside at dawn and they introduce it to the sun. And in Hopi culture, the sun has a huge impact, or a huge part of their culture, because Hopis are farmers. And the sun plays an important role in life for them, their ability to grow food and sustain their culture. And so in this ceremony, they take this baby out, they introduce it to the sun at dawn, and then all the Hopi aunties come, because it is a matriarchal society. All the Hopis aunties come, and they whisper in this baby's ear, and they wash its hair, and they give him, for us it was a boy, they give him a name. All these aunties gave him a name in Hopi. And so we went and had this ceremony, and as part of, like, that's something I couldn't do for myself. That's something our family couldn't do for ourselves. So as a way to honor that knowledge that these aunties were giving to us and this experience that they were giving to us, we made some bracelets to say thank you to them. And so we used art as a way to honor this knowledge that's being passed on. This piece right here, if you can see it, is it's a dollar coin with an image of Sacagawea on it. And it's the MMIW red hand image is on this piece. And for me, this is one of the pieces that as I thought about, okay, what do I want to express in the art piece? Here's some knowledge that I wanted to share through this piece. That when the person who wears this piece, they get an opportunity to explain knowledge about what this image means and why it's significant. And that's something you'll see in Native American art throughout, that so much of Native American art is not just colors and shapes, that those colors and shapes have meaning, significance, and that's how we pass on these ideas in our culture. That is one way that we pass them on. Okay, here's another way. So I've been blessed to have the opportunity to work with eagle feathers. And while these pieces are artistic in nature, right? You see all these pieces that I've made. While they're artistic in nature, they have significant meaning, right? So this piece right here, this feather right in the middle, was a gift that I gave to my son when he graduated last year. And as we gave this or did this ceremony to give him this eagle feather, in a way to recognize his accomplishments, but it was a really good experience because the person who did this ceremony to give him this feather, they also gave him responsibility. It wasn't a gift like a birthday present. It was an acknowledgement of what he had done up to this point, and it was a charge to do more as he went forward in the future. And it was an amazing experience for me. And while it is artistic and there is color and values and harmony and contrast, it is definitely means more than that. So here's what I would like you to do. On this slide is, let me do this. On this slide is a opportunity for you to share how knowledge that someone has passed on to you. Okay, so here's the question. List a person who has passed something significant down to you. And then part number 2 is how would your life be negatively impacted if you did not have this, right? So you're just going to type your answer in, and then a little post-it note will pop up. And then I might ask some of you to share maybe expound a little bit on what your answer was. So if you'll take a minute and do that while I share my example, to you from my life. So I would say for me, some significant knowledge that got passed to me, that has really impacted my life in a positive way, has come through basketball. I'm a high school teacher. I teach health in high school, and I'm a basketball coach. I've been coaching high school basketball for 20 years. And when I grew up, there weren't a lot of things. Like I said, I grew up in a primarily urban or suburban area, and there were like 4 brown kids in my high school. And one of them was my older brother who didn't really want to talk to me. And my basketball coach in high school, the only place I really felt comfortable speaking out to the group was on the basketball court. And my basketball coach was not the kind of guy who like knew a ton about basketball or like how to break down drills or like how to break out skill. What made him amazing was his ability to show love for me as a person, which I didn't feel like I got in the rest of my school experience very much from the school. I got it from my family and my friends, but like in the school setting, I didn't feel like I got that. And here's one person who really gave it to me. And what I appreciate about that is that it's given me an opportunity to try and do that in my own life, in my own work. And so for me, that's been something that's been a positive in my life, that a good example of something that I can do for generations that come after me. So we got a couple people that shared, and please, the rest of you, if you can type something in, that would be awesome. But maybe I'll ask Kayla. Kayla, can you're talking about your grandmother. Can you share with us, maybe expound on that, how that's been important for you?
Just knowing how to speak Navajo is just really important because like I'm Navajo and it's good to like talk to family members on the reservation in Navajo.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask Mike. Mike, will you share with us as well?
Okay. I feel free that you don't have to call on me because I'm the old school teacher guy here. I know this is for the youth, but if you still want me to respond, I will. I'm more of an observer, but my parents, I think it's the same idea. Taught me who I am, my family connections, my history, my ancestry is Italian, and I knew my Italian immigrants and the story of how they arrived here. So that's kind of a cool thing for me.
Okay, thanks, Mike. No just observers here. Everybody's participants. So, all right, we'll go with one more. Solomon, share with us, please.
My grandma taught me Navajo, so I could talk to the people on the res.
Okay, and can I ask you, how do you think it would be different if you didn't know Navajo?
I wouldn't have speak to other people on the res. So my grandma just taught me.
Okay, good. So that's super important. And I'm glad you can recognize that. That's awesome. And so that's part of this. Hopefully, when we ask you to create a piece of art today, when we ask you to create, when you get the chance to create the art that you want to create today, I want you to try and remember this, how this knowledge, these people who pass knowledge to you. All right, second idea. So Chief Seattle said, and this is Northwest United States, right? Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound, all things connect, right? So the second idea is this idea of sliver beads. And when I first started, so when you first start beading, and some of you probably already know this, but you get a hank of beads and they're sorted by size, right? And then you get a hank of beads, and even within that hank of beads, there are some different sizes, right? They're not all exactly the same. And the more vintage beads you work with, the more it's like this. And so when I first started working with beads, I would, throw these beads out. You get these ones that are really small, and you're like, they don't fit, or they're not like all the others, and you would throw them out. And I remember we were talking one day to some, I can't even remember who it was, and we were talking, and they said, don't throw those beads away. There's a place where you will use those beads. And so if you look at this, bracelet, this is a bracelet I made. It's 2-needle applique, and this bracelet is a butterfly image, and in the wings of the butterfly, this is whirlwinds, right? And as I was going through, you put with 2-needle applique, you put all of these beads on, and you tack them down. I tack them down. Everyone gets tacked down. Every bead on here, which is, there's 2,000 or 3,000 beads on here, gets tacked down individually. Well, you get to these spots where that bead you've been saving for your whole project, where that is the bead that fits. So if you look in the little red circle, there is a bead that's way skinnier than the rest of them. And I saved this bead my whole project until I got to this spot where I found the place where this bead goes. And it is really a really important idea that sometimes you go through life and you have ideas or things that you experience or traits that you have, and you feel like growing up that there's not really a place for them, or even that they're a deficit. Like even like sometimes you wish they wouldn't go away or they wouldn't be there. And then later on, as you grow in life and have experiences, you realize there is a reason for those and they become beneficial. When we were talking about, in my class, we were talking in my health class recently, we were talking about mental health, and we were talking about this idea that your issues, when you have issues that affect your mental health, that change your perspective about how you see life, those issues don't go away. They become, they don't go away. You learn how to deal with them, right? And so when we talk about dealing with issues, mental health issues, it's not a matter of just making your life perfect and having all of those things go away. It's a matter of making sure that you have resources and support enabled to be able to deal with them. That's what I see when I see sliver beads. That those are those things that maybe at some point in your life, you're like, this is too hard, or I don't know if I can handle this. But then later in your life, you're like, that made me a better person, or that gave me more skills, right? That's kind of the idea of sliver beads. This piece right here I made for my sister, and it's my younger sister, and she is a therapist, and she generally has spent most of her adult life working in treatment facilities. So she's working with young people who are having mental health issues or substance abuse issues. And she's just the kind of person that can kind of just talk to anybody in life. So I made this butterfly image for her. She's the kind of person that kind of floats around and touches groups here and touches someone there and touches someone over there throughout her life. So that's what this image was. And all of these pieces, these are some applique pieces that I've done for people or for myself or for whoever, and all of them have sliver beads. All of them have little beads in there that when you look at them initially, you don't know if they fit, but then when you look at them as a whole, you realize they're part of the picture, that they're an important part of the picture. So these are all pieces that I've done in the past. So here's my question for you. Will you think of something that is a sliver bead in your life? What is something that you initially maybe thought, I don't know if this fits in my life or if I have purpose for it, or maybe it's something you're like, I don't even know if I want this to be part of me, but now you're realizing you have value for it. And I'm gonna ask Amanda to share. While you guys type yours in, I'm gonna maybe ask Amanda to share maybe something that has been part of her life that now she realizes is a sliver bead.
I could answer that in several ways. I think I have an ability to connect with people on a really personal level. So I'm not very good at large group settings. I find them to be very overwhelming. I struggle with that, but I think that's because my skill is to connect with people on a really personal level. And so now that I'm older and I have opportunities that I've cultivated in my life to be able to do that, that aspect of my personality is a real asset and a skill, whereas before it felt really limiting to me. So that's my sliver bead, one of my many sliver beads, I guess.
All right, thank you, Amanda. We're waiting for some answers. So I think I'm just gonna call on somebody. So let's go with Carter. Carter, I didn't ask you to share on the last one. So maybe can you share with us what is a sliver bead that you think you have identified in your life?
I think a sliver bead would be maybe that I have a hard time holding a conversation, but I think the abuse is that I don't hold a conversation out longer than it needs to be. Kind of straight to the point. I don't beat around the bush. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Carter. I really appreciate it. And that is a super important skill in life. Just having worked in many different organizations, having people in the room who can say, let's get to the point, let's do this. That's so important. So I'm glad you appreciate that. What will you call him? Somebody?
I think we should call him
April, share with us.
But I'm just the host. Just kidding. No, okay, cool. So I was thinking about this, and I think just, even being, because I'm half Navajo and half Mexican, and so I kind of want to consider myself as a sliver bead. And because of that, because of my unique experiences growing up, having these two different cultures in my life, I feel like I'm able to fit in sometimes when it's right. And so just kind of like saying, as we live throughout our life, we have experiences that are just unique to us. And because of those experiences, they will help us in our future to kind of be able to fit in where we need to be at that right time. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I failed to mention that I'm Ute and Hopi, but I'm also Chinese. Like my mom is half Chinese. And that's like, much like you said, was growing up, that was like, I didn't know if I'd ever meet anybody else who was Native American and Chinese. But I met an artist, and he's actually really famous. His name is Louis Gong. His last name, Louis Gong. And when I met him the first time, he said, we were talking about being Chinese and Native American, and he said, I never thought I'd meet any other Chindians, because he called himself a Chindian, Chinese and Indian, and it was hilarious. And so I feel that as well. All right, next idea is this Pawnee. Pawnees are in the Southern Plains. Eagle Chief said, all things in the world are two. In our minds, we are two, good and evil. With our eyes, we see two things that are fair and things that are ugly. We have the right hand that strikes and makes for evil. We have our left hand full of kindness near the heart. One foot may lead us to go to an evil way. The other foot may lead us to a good. So all things are two. And that's one of the things I really understood or realized when I started doing art, and especially when I started working with porcupine quills. So one thing I realized, and maybe you didn't realize, if we think about porcupine quills, they are pointy, and we're talking about North American porcupines. They are pointy and sharp. In fact, they're so sharp, they're 5 times as sharp as a hypodermic needle. I read this article that talked about how it takes 5 times less pressure to insert a porcupine quill into your skin or into your finger than it would take a hypodermic needle. So they're really sharp, and I think most people know that, but that's not the hard part. The hard part about working with porcupine quills are these barbs. And so if you look, this is a microscopic picture of a porcupine quill, and it's not smooth, right? We kind of would think of it like smooth, like a needle, but it is not. It has these they look like shingles on here, and these are actually rough, and it keeps the quill from coming out. So you stick it in your needle really easily, but it's really hard to get out. And sometimes I will be surprised at how hard I have to pull in order to get them out if I accidentally stick them in. And it is definitely painful, and it makes you think about things twice when you're working on them. And so here's my question, and this is actually a draw it. So you get a chance to draw something, or you can import a picture from Google or something like that if you want. In life, so I want you to think of something in life that is easy going in, but it's difficult coming out, right? That you encounter things in life that when you get into them, super easy, not a big deal, but when you try and get out, then it's way more difficult. So if you could draw a picture or import a picture of something that that will help you out. So here, I'll give you, while you're looking or thinking or drawing, maybe give you 1 or 2 examples that people in the past have told me as I've done this presentation in the past. One that some people brought up was social media, right? That it's really easy to get a social media account. It's super easy to get in, and it seems unassuming, but there are so many things that come with social media. Maybe it's cyberbullying, or maybe it's self-esteem issues, or maybe it is time spent, right? Or money spent. That all of these things come with it, and that when people make social media a part of their life, they forget that these other things come with it, which makes it hard to get out. And I thought that was such an insightful comment. I presented to some of the kids at my school, and one of my students said, "Sloughing class." So I teach at a school where there are probably 50 restaurants, fast food restaurants, within a 5-block radius of our school. And it's really easy to just walk to a restaurant during school if you want to. And this student was talking about how the first time they went, it was not a big deal, and they missed class, and then they made up the stuff, and it was not a big deal. But the second time they went, they missed a little bit more. The third time they went, they missed even more. And after a while, it was like, well, why do I even go to class anymore? Because I've missed so much that it's not going to make any difference. And I thought that was very insightful as well, because it doesn't seem like a big deal the first time you miss class. So yeah, there's a couple ideas. As you're still putting your pictures in, maybe I can just ask somebody what they are efforting, what they're drawing, or what they're finding a picture of, and you can put it up as it comes in. Let me ask Veronica. Veronica, can you share with us what you're drawing or what you are thinking?
Okay. Well, I wasn't really set on an answer yet, but immediately I think of like relationships. Like sometimes if you meet somebody and then they seem like really cool at first and like start easy to hang out with them and they're just always there, and then just me and my own personal experience, I've been in a relationship where, you know, then the person just does something really to hurt my feelings and I don't want to be around them, but then they just keep popping up, and it's like, oh, sometimes it's harder to, you know, tell that person to stay away than it is like in the beginning when it was just so easy and everything was like, oh, great. But then, you know, I guess it was a lesson for me to realize too, like how to protect my own heart and how to make sure that the people who I am letting into my life are of value and will, you know, support the things that I am passionate about and be a positive influence in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing. And that's really true, right? That in basketball coaching world, there's this idea of contributing or contaminating. You're either contributing or contaminating. And that's, I think a lot of our relationships in our life are like that, especially the ones we spend time on. So I really like that. Carter talked about procrastination. Solomon's talked about hunting. Tiano, can you share with us what maybe you're thinking of? I know your picture's not up yet, but maybe can you share with us what you're thinking about putting up or what you're efforting?
I don't know, maybe eating unhealthy. You know, it's you like junk food, but it's hard to eat healthy.
That is such a good example. And I think that all of us experience that. That's such a good example. I really appreciate that. They opened a soda store right across the street from my school that I work at. And I was like, oh, that is going to be the death of me. And luckily I'm a health teacher. So like, it makes me keep it in check, but it's still like, I agree with you so much. That is such a good example. I appreciate you sharing that with us. All right, so let's get to some big ideas. Oh, before we do that, sorry, here's some cool work. Here's some cool work that I've done. So I started doing cool work about 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And the hard thing about quill work was there's not a lot of people to teach you how to do quill work. And so a lot of mine was reaching out through social or digital media or finding videos that people had put out there or trial and error. And it was a lot of effort to try and do quill work. And so here are some of the different kinds of pieces, quill work pieces that I've made. And really one place that I think I've really made a niche is making these bracelets. You don't see these too often. And that's really something that I really value, the knowledge of figuring out how to make them. So if you haven't ever really seen quill work very much, this is what one way it looks. There's a variety of different ways that people make those pieces. All right. Okay, so now it's your turn. So what we, oh, let me just do this real fast before I'll come back to this one. If you would like to connect with me or Amanda and ask questions about projects in the future, how did you do that? Or what did you mean by that? Or can you help me with this? One of the easiest ways to connect with me is through Instagram. So this is my personal Instagram, and it's pretty much all my art. I kind of turned it, there's like 5 pictures of me eating pizza at the very beginning, and the rest is all my art. And then this is the collective we started, Turtle Island Art Collective. And if you have questions for us, or if you want to try and connect with an artist that you're like there's one lady who's amazing at making moccasins in our group. And in fact, we just commissioned her to make pairs for our kids because they're that good. I have some connections in that way. And so if you want to reach out to me, you can do it through Instagram. That's probably the most accessible way. But what we are going to do now is we are going to helping you make a pattern, creating your own art. Okay, so what I would like to do is, let me change my camera. Okay, so, hold on a second. Let me open this camera up so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so if you look, this was I think we sent you this. Is that right, April? Did we send these out? Okay, so we sent you this template right here. And what it creates is it creates a, this big box creates a 6-inch by 1.5 inch loom bracelet pattern. And this smaller one creates a 1-inch by 6-inch loom bracelet pattern. But before you start like drawing stuff on, what I want you to do is I want you to think of the ideas that we just talked about, whether it's honor knowledge or sliver beads or points and barbs. I want you to think of one of those ideas, and I want you to try and represent it in your pattern. And it doesn't have to be like a literal like drawing of a So Delicious cup or whatever. It could be a color or a shape that you are giving your own meaning to. You know, this color represents my grandma who taught me Navajo. Somebody mentioned that, right? It doesn't have to be a picture of your grandma, but I want you to put some meaning into your picture. And so what I did is on this side, let me move my light. So on this side, I just sketched it out with a pencil, just roughly what I wanted my image to be. And then I just started filling in the boxes. So you can see how on this side, I just started filling in the boxes of how I wanted it to look, right? And then you can kind of just manipulate it as you go throughout. So this is a Hopi Sun image, and we kind of talked about that before. And these little squares for me represent just the mesas and the pueblos, right? Where Hopis live in the mesas because they were peaceful. They went up to the mesas so they wouldn't have to fight. And then they built pueblos on top of the mesas. And today the pueblos is where ceremony happens. And so that's kind of why I picked this image. Yours doesn't have to be like this necessarily. It could be just geometrical shapes or patterns. So like I said, you just draw the squares on, or draw your image on with a pencil, however you want it to be. And then once you get there, you just start filling in the boxes in order to create. And you can use colored pencils, or you can use colored pencils or Sharpies or something like that as you go through. But I really would like you to put something, represent one of the ideas that we talked about today in yours, okay? Represent it in your pattern. Now, you don't have to have this pattern done right now. This is probably the first step, and you can create it. But what we're gonna do is move on and show you what happens once you've created your pattern, what happens next, Okay, so that's what we're going to move on to.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so one thing I will tell you, this is a pattern that we use when we are mounting our beadwork onto a cuff bracelet. The bracelet that we're teaching you is going to be a leather strap, and hopefully you've each received like a strip of leather. And so I would maybe shorten up what you're doing a little bit, because I have found that when I bead this full length and then put it on a leather bracelet that I'm like tying around a wrist, sometimes it's a little too long. So keep in mind, are you making this for somebody that has a pretty big wrist? Then go ahead. If you're making it for your little sibling, shorten it. So as you decide to fill this in, think about like what the parameters are first. That would be my bit of advice. So this is a pattern that I'm using, and I really do a lot of color gradient. I do a lot of geometric patterns in my loom work. That putting colors together is something that is like soothing to me. And so most of the work that I do looks like that. Okay, I'm going to show you guys how to warp a loom. So everybody got a loom in their kit. Ours is similar. It's a little bit different because ours has these anchor points on this back part of the loom, and I believe your anchor point is on the side, which is fine. So when I say anchor point, just know that what I'm referring to is, for you, it will be that little eye hook that's on the side. You all have thread. So if your loom is already put together and you want to follow along, excuse me, then that would be great. If you want to watch and take it all in, and then like we said, we're recording this and you want to refer to it later, that's okay. If you're following along and you get stuck and you have questions, we can help answer them. So I'm taking my thread and I'm tying a little loop, and I'm going to go get that tail through it several times. Because this, when we tie this very first one off on your anchor point, it has to be secure. If it comes loose while you're working on something, you're going to be real bummed out. So I'm taking this loop that you can see, and I'm finding my anchor point, and like I said, yours is on the side. And then I'm going to tie that off. Okay. And if it's a struggle and it's awkward at first, that's okay. Keep going. That's one of the things beadwork teaches you, is to just keep going. Then I'm going to tie a couple more knots, maybe like 3 knots, because like I said, if this comes loose, you got to start over. So I'm tying a couple more. I'm going to make sure it's secure by tugging on it. I'm tugging on it and it's not moving. If you tug on it and it gives, then it's not tight enough. So go ahead and get to that point, and then I have to figure out how many threads across I need. So my particular pattern has, let's see, it has 13 beads that I drew into my pattern. That means I'm going to need 14 threads going across my loom, because each bead needs a little lane to fit in. So I'm going to start, and you have grooves on your loom. The thread goes in a groove, and then you try and get as straight across as you can. And then I come and I find my anchor point. I just loop under it. I don't have to tie it off. Just make sure that I loop under it. You will loop under your anchor point on the side. And then I find my very next groove. Don't want to skip a groove, because then you'll have a big gap and your beads won't fit perfectly into your lane. This is nice because we've given you size 11 beads, and these little grooves are going to make a nice little home for each size 11 bead to fit right inside of. So I'm going to go back and forth until I have 14 strings. That gives me 13 lanes. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone following along and has any questions? Is anybody stuck so far?
And you can see that she's doing hers on the side of this piece that she's already started, just to show you how to start it. Yours won't necessarily have another lane on this.
Yeah. I mean, I would recommend not working on a piece with 2 on it at once, even if your loom is big enough for that, because you're going to kind of, it gets awkward. But I want to show you some things you're going to need to know. Like if you run out of thread, or let's say maybe you put a row of beads on and it's you did your pattern wrong and you made a mistake. I'm going to show you how to take that apart. Did someone have a question? You can unmute yourself at any point if you need to. So you're just going to keep following along with me, and look, I made a mistake, right? Already there is a gap. I'm going to hold it up closer so you can see, because I know it's so hard on Zoom just with this film. You can see there's too big of a gap because I accidentally skipped a lane. So I'm just going to scoot this over and then scoot this other one over. If you've done that, that's okay, but you do have to fix it. Okay, that's one of the things that beadwork has taught me. If I try and cut corners, it's not going to work. So if you've made a mistake, kind of like in life, you just got to fix it. All right. Let's see. And then I stop and count every once in a while. Count your grooves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7. I'm going to stop there because I decided I'm going to show you just a shortened version of what it is we're doing. Okay. Once I've got as many threads across, so for you, if you have 21 beads in your pattern, you're going to have 22 threads. Just an example. So I go underneath my anchor point, just like you've been doing all along when you kind of hook it underneath. And you've got to make sure that you don't let go of this, because you don't want to have a bunch of slack in your thread. If you warp this and you're super tight, like if you're pulling those threads really tight, what it's going to do is create beadwork that's really puckered. It's going to look nice while you are beading, but when you cut it off the loom, it's going to scrunch up and be really puckery, and there's not any way to fix it. So your tension needs to be, you don't want it to be so loose that you can see that it's wavy in the threads, but you also don't want it to be like tight like a drum. Okay, so I'm never letting go of this thread while I'm doing this process. I always hold on to it, and then I have to tie off to my anchor point. And again, it's the same idea. You want to make sure that you tie it off a couple times so that it has no wiggle room to come apart while you are applying your beads. I have had people come to me and say, oh, I'm about halfway through with my pattern, but then these warping threads came loose. What do I do? And I say, I am so sorry, you start over. So what you have just learned right now is called warping the loom. If it feels really awkward at first, that's okay. Okay, so I've struggled with my threads here, got my knots tied nice and tight. I'm going to try and show you what I want my tension to be. So I can give like a tiny bit of bounce. You can see when I'm touching that. If I could touch it and get, like, let's say, get all the way down to the counter, that's way too loose. If it doesn't give me any bounce at all, then it's too tight. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to tie on your very first row. So
wait, so before you do that, just maybe big ideas from warping the loom. Okay, so big ideas from warping the loom is one row for every bead in your pattern, right? So you're going to go one row for every bead in your pattern. Number 2 is tight but not too tight, right? So you want it tight but not too tight as you're going through. So those are probably the 2 big ideas from warping the loom.
Once you guys have mastered this, which I have total confidence that you will, if you stick with it, I know you will. If I can do it, you can do it. You will find that maybe you go to a powwow and someone has some beadwork for sale. You're going to notice some of the things that you maybe didn't notice before, like if their beadwork is really kind of loose and maybe looks a little bit messy, you'll say, okay, I can tell when that loom was warped, it was too loose. Or if it's really puckered beadwork, you'll say, oh, okay, I can tell they warped it a little too tight. You'll find that you'll start to notice things like that. Okay, So the needle that I want you guys to use is not your Glover's needle. The Glover's needle is what we'll be using next Saturday. Glover's needle is designed to go through flesh. So that's for leather, not for your finger. So you want to get the other, I believe they're size 12. Go ahead and cut yourself a thread. And I do mine maybe 2 arm lengths. You don't want it to be so long that you're getting really tangled up and having lots of knots. Go through and thread your needle. I pull, let's see, maybe about that much so that I'm not accidentally unthreading my needle over and over.
So that's like 5 inches.
Yeah. And then we are going to.
And then you're not going to tie it. Like
Yeah.
when you sew stuff, you tie it together, you're going to have a hanging end.
Yep. So it's open. It has a tail. You're not tying it off. So that gives you the opportunity to tie it to the loom and then pick up your needles. Sorry, pick up your beads. Okay. So now you want to attach this to your outermost thread. So it doesn't matter which side you tie it off to. If you're left-handed, it's a little bit easier to tie it onto the right outermost thread. But ultimately, as long as you follow the direction of your pattern consistently the same way throughout, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to show you. I'm coming through my very outermost thread right here. I'm going to start maybe at this position on the loom, so that gives me room to work all throughout the rest of those threads. If I tie it in the middle, that's going to not give me as much room to work. Okay, pull that through till you get kind of close to the end. Leave yourself enough thread so that you can tie a knot. And here's a trick. Here's an important trick. When I'm tying my knot right here, I'm only going to tie it twice. I want it to be secure, but if I tied it like 4 or 5 times, then I would have kind of a bigger knot, and in my finished product, it would really stand out. It would be very noticeable. So just give it 2 knots. That's it. Tie that off. Hopefully you're following along with me and I'm not going too fast. Okay, there's 1. And there's 2. I've got a little tail here. That's good. That's what we want. All right, I'm going to pull my beads over. I'm using a beading mat today. We discovered that for us, that really works well. In the beginning, in the early days, I think we used paper plates, and that's fine too. But it's kind of nice to have a beading mat if you come across one at the trading post or see one at the, maybe Joann's Fabric, pick one up. But like I said, you can just spread this out on your counter or whatever you have. So now what I would do is I need to pick up the very first row of beads on my pattern. Okay. If I was going to do this pattern, I like to use a Post-it note to keep track. And I'm going to line this up so that I can actually see just 1 row at a time. I know my daughter does the same. Sometimes she'll come from the opposite direction, because if you're looking at your entire pattern, sometimes your eyes just start swimming and it's hard to keep track of, like, what am I actually looking at? So this breaks it down. So if I was going to pick up this first row, then I can see, oh, this is the color. Each square represents a bead that I'm picking up. I know exactly what I need to do if I'm just looking at 1 row at a time. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to draw your pattern out. Take some time to draw it out so that you understand which square is supposed to be which bead, which color you want, so that when you're doing it and looking at just 1 row at a time, you know exactly what you need to pick up. Okay. So I'm going to pick up, just for the purposes of showing you how to put on your first row, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I've got 7 to work with, so I'm going to do blue, orange, and then light orange, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to do the opposite. Actually, sorry, the mirror image of that. So when you get to the point where you've got your pattern drawn, you're going to do this. And like Alan said, not all of these beads are going to be exactly the same size. You really want your loom work to be as uniform as possible. So do your best to kind of sort through and pick up the beads that are going to be uniform. Okay, now this is super important. We are going to do under over. So your beads are going to come underneath your warping threads, never on top. And then you're going to pull the thread until there's not slack left. And I'm going to use my finger to push these beads into the lane that they belong. So let me get a little closer. You can see that I've used my finger to push each one into place. Your first row is kind of the hardest. It makes it a lot easier for those subsequent rows. If your pattern's really wide, it's a lot harder. I would recommend for your first project to do something that's a little bit more narrow so that you can just get used to the mechanics of how this works. So if I had 2 beads in one row, I'd have to adjust that and make sure that I've got them all fit, 1 in each lane. Now we're going to make a sandwich. So we came from underneath, we used our finger to push it up into place, and I'm going to make a sandwich. So I've got my beads underneath, my warping threads in the middle, and now my needle needs to come in the top. It's the top piece of bread. Your needle has to go on top of the warping threads, but you're putting it through the beads. So I like to tell people, just visualize the top half of that itty bitty hole in the beads. And as I'm putting this needle through, if I look really closely, I can see a little metallic flash in between each bead. And that helps me know that I for sure got my needle on top of the warping threads. Sometimes you'll find that you do accidentally get your needle underneath the warping thread. That's going to happen, especially as you learn. So be patient with yourself. That's called dropping a bead. The more proficient you become at this one step right here, the less you'll drop your beads and the cleaner your beadwork will look in the end result. Okay, so I made my sandwich. Now we're going to talk about tension again, because I'm pulling this needle through and I'm pulling my thread. And if I pull this thread super tight, I'm going to have the same problem with tension. It's going to look really pretty when I'm beading, but then when I go to cut it off of the loom, it's going to pucker. So hold on, I got a little knot there. I pull the thread through so that each bead is, they're just shaking hands. They're just saying hello. They're close, but they're not too close. I'm going to get a little closer so you can see that. I have 1 bead in each lane, and I've pulled my tension so that there's not slack, but it's not super tight. Okay, that's what you need to know. So the next thing I would do was another row exactly the same way. I would pick up my row of beads, follow my pattern, use a Post-it if you need to break down like I'm looking at 1 row at a time. Come from underneath, use my finger to press those beads into each lane, and then come through with your needle. If anyone has any questions, this is a great time to ask them, because I'm gonna move on to troubleshooting. I know there's a couple of things you're gonna need to know, because what we really want is for each of you to, this is our challenge to you. We want you to draw a pattern and finish the beadwork between now and our next class, because at our next class, we want to show you how to take it off the loom and put it on a piece of leather. So is everybody square before I move on to the next step? Okay, excellent. So I have this little bit of beadwork that I started for the purpose of showing you. Let's say I have gotten to this end of my thread where there's not a whole lot left to keep picking up rows of beads and applying them. What do I do? So I'm going to thread my needle, pretend like that was on because I was working this whole time. Okay.
Sometimes it takes a minute, especially when your eyes are old like mine. Oh, hold on a sec, guys. Sorry, technical difficulties. I'm going to thread the needle and show you how to tie off and pick up a new thread to tie on so that you can keep going. I remember the first time I did a project, I didn't know what to do when I got to the end of my thread. And so it just kind of sat there for a couple months until I found someone who could answer this question for me. Okay, you are going to come up between the last bead and the second to last bead. And I'm putting my needle through the edge where that outer warping thread is. And I just have to come through and tie it off in a knot. Remember, we don't want to tie a bunch of knots because we don't want a big bulky knot. And then the same way that you started your row, that's exactly what you do to add thread. So when I trim this, I don't want to trim it really close because I don't want it to ever come loose and then have my beads start to fall off. So I'm going to just leave a couple inches. We call that a tail. And then you get your 2 arm lengths of thread again, the same way you would when you are starting out. And you're going to tie that off exactly where you made your knot to cut the old thread. So thread your needle. This gives you an opportunity to see for a second time how you start off. Thread your needle, pull maybe 5 inches of thread through. Leave that other end open. You're not tying any knots in this. Okay, come through the very last bead and the second to last bead. And I'm putting my needle in between those 2 beads. And I want to just get it right at the edge of that warping thread. Well, right there. And then I'm going to come pull my thread so I've got plenty to work with and tie it off, make 2 knots. And then that gives you a new thread so you can keep going and you don't have to sit there and be stuck like I did. Any questions so far? Okay, give it 2 knots and that's it. When you get to the end of, oh, actually, let me show you one more thing. Let's say I made a mistake and I need to undo a row, and maybe it's even like a big enough mistake and I noticed it a couple rows back and I'm like, you know what? I gotta fix it. What we need to do is pull a thread through to be able to take that off. And I would encourage you to invest the time again in fixing a mistake if you make it. It's going to be worth it in the end, even if it's super frustrating. Okay, if I wanted to take one of these rows off, and maybe I can hold this up higher for me so I can use my hands. Can you hold this? All right. I'm going to come to this opposite end here, and I put my needle through this outer gap, but I have to get it between the first and second bead. And then I'm going to pull. Yeah. I'm going to pull, and what would happen, and I can show you on here too, because that might be easier. I would pull, and you can see the thread comes loose. And that gives me the chance to undo the sandwich. And once I undo the sandwich, I'm free to remove the beads that I had made a mistake with. So I get that thread, I pull it through, and then now you can see they all came loose and they're underneath, which is where I had put them first. Now I can take them all off and start again with fixing whatever mistake in my pattern I made. Okay, there's one last thing that we have to teach you. This is, I would say, probably people's least favorite part of beadwork because you're going to do this at the very end. So once you have finished putting all your whole pattern's worth of beads onto your loom, You're going to feel so good. You're going to think, oh man, I made those mistakes, but then I fixed them. I'm all done. But you're not all done because you got to thatch. And I probably forget about thatching every time I go celebrate. Oh, I did it. It's finished. Oh, wait, I forgot. I have to thatch. So thatching is something that we do so that when you take this off the loom and you mount it, your beadwork is not going to come apart. If you don't do thatching and you just cut this off the loom and then mount it onto something, it's going to come apart. And that's going to be real sad. And I've done that before. So I just learned from my mistakes and don't do it. Okay, pretend this is a finished pattern. I'm going to tie on just the same way we would tie on if we were adding threads. So I'm going to come through that gap, last 2 beads, and tie off onto the warping thread. Excuse me. And then you have to put your needle through these warping threads at the edge of your beadwork, under, over, under, over, under, over. You're basically weaving until you get maybe a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to show you. Will you hold it up again? Let's see. That's close enough. So, and sometimes I use my finger to kind of boss these threads around and manipulate it. So I'm going to go over, under, and I just have to keep doing that. And then I get to the end, pull my thread through so there's no slack. Don't pull it so tight so that you're changing the shape of these loom threads. If I pull it really tight, they're going to start to go inward, and we don't want that. You don't want to change that. You want these to stay. Okay, now I got to do it again in the opposite direction. Over, under, over, under, over, under. And you have to do this on both sides. And you do it until, like I said, you have about a 1/4 inch. This is where your glue comes in. We made sure that you guys have this awesome glue that we always like to use. Once you get a 1/4 inch of thatching done, you're going to run a bead of handy old Aleene's glue across that little row of thatching. At that point, leave it alone until we teach you what to do next on Saturday. I think we have a picture that we can actually show you. And it would be, so give us just a sec to pull that up. It would be like the last one. Let's see if we can do that. And it'll give you a little bit more of a close-up of what thatching would look like.
Okay, so here's a recap of maybe some pictures of what she's just gone through. So tie off your thread. Fit it, yeah, 1 row for each bead, right? 1 row for each bead in your pattern. Tie on your first thread. Push up your first row with your finger below it.
From underneath.
From underneath. And then your needle goes over the top of your warp threads, still pushing up from the bottom. And then pull it all the way through. Here's what we were talking about, how to pull a thread out, right? You just pull on that last thread and loosen the threads, and then you can pull the thread out and change if you messed up. Here's the picture of the needle pulling the thread out. And then here's how to tie on. So when she was saying last, in between the gap between the last 2 beads that you put on, that's what she was talking about, right? How you tie a new thread on once you run out of thread. And here's thatching, right? So here's the over under she was talking about for the thatching. And then remember, you're going to do about at least a 1/4 of an inch of thatching. That gives you a little bit of tab and you're going to tuck that under once we start to mount it. So it needs to be long enough that it's going to stay under when you tuck under a 1/4 inch or longer of thread that has glue on it, dried glue on it on the end. So
that's how you do it. I would love to see if anybody happened to be following along. You want to share your progress, and don't be shy because it's new and it's challenging to do something new. So show us what you got.
Did anybody get their loom warped? Is anybody awake?
I'm awake.
Okay, so if that was a lot to take in, I believe we're recording this, right?
Oh, look. Looks like someone's showing.
Is there something in the chat?
Can you pin there? I can't see it. Let's see. Oh yeah, there it was. Let's see. Who was that?
Oh,
Oh, Melissa. Looks good in that house. Putting on some beads.
That
I like it.
warms my heart. That's awesome. And you know what? I can see that you did a really good job warping your loom. That's awesome. Okay, this is the thing that I always tell people. Sometimes this can feel like a lot to take in at once, but if you stick with it, you'll realize that once you get yourself started, it's really just like this rhythmic flow. It's actually pretty relaxing. And if you just give it some of that patience with yourself when you make mistakes and try and just keep going and be consistent. One of the things that I love the most that really motivates me when I get frustrated or when I get impatient or when I say, I made a mistake, I'm just going to throw this away, I don't even want to work on it anymore. I try and picture that feeling at the end when I have created something beautiful, where I have this end result and there is something that did not exist before that I have made. And that feeling is so satisfying and so rewarding. I want you guys to have that feeling. It makes me feel good about myself. And I want you to have that feeling. It makes you feel that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and from a mental health standpoint, that's one of the things that science is finding that helps you get through hard times is your ability to participate. It's called eustress, right? Eustressful activities that are hard, but they are challenging and you learn how to overcome a challenge. Those help you for the times when you face things that are even harder, where you don't know if you're going to make it through. If you have practiced or participated in activities that have taught you how to get through challenges, then you will be more successful in making it through those other ones that you don't know if you're going to make it through. And for both of us, art and beadwork is one of those things for us that sometimes you pull all of your beads out. Like I've had projects where I've just cut all of the beads off after hours of work and started over because things weren't working out. But then I made changes and figured out what I needed to do differently, and then the piece comes out great. So that's definitely one of those things that helps out for sure.
And I'll also share with you, I know that if I am actively cultivating a negative perspective or thought process about myself when I'm trying to create a piece of beadwork, it reflects in how my beadwork turns out. If I am patient with myself, kind to myself, and try and change those thought patterns, then that love goes into what I'm making. And usually what I'm making is for someone else. And I want to give them something where they can feel the love that was put into it. And so that would be my other little bit of advice, is to put that into your beadwork. You want to share with them that they should give away what they make?
Yeah, and maybe this is our last idea. So somebody told me, I don't even know who it was, a long time ago when we first started beading, they talked about this idea of giving away the first thing you make. And it doesn't have to be the very first thing, but like the first good thing. I don't know. I think that's what I probably do now, is that you just give that piece away, that it's something that you give to somebody else, because in all of these ways we talked about the beginning, to honor the knowledge that people have given you. Right, that beading is not yours per se. It is something we use to express ideas. It's something we use to pass culture on. It's something we use to honor other people. It's something we use to show the creator how much our regalia we care about our regalia. Just those ideas all go into this idea. So giving away one of the first pieces, I would say, that you make, finding a person to give that to. It's a good habit, definitely a good habit that shows that you're honoring the knowledge of where this came from.
So please, please, please take the time this week to try and complete your pattern. and do your thatching so that when we come back next Saturday, we can show you what you need to do to cut it off the loom and mount it. If you have questions or you get stuck, you can get in touch with us through Al's Instagram. And you know, I have these things because someone shared with me. And so thank you for letting me share that with you.
April, anything else?
Thank you so much. I do want to open it up for a little bit for any chats or questions that anybody might have. In the meantime, please fill out this quick survey really quick. We'll just, let's see, Erin will pop that up again to do a survey. But yes, please, if you have any questions for Al and Amanda while we have them right here live, please, call in or raise your hand or say it in the chat if you're too scared to talk, because sometimes I get scared. But thank you so much for what you've shared. Seriously, it's just been awesome. I forgot that I actually did make something. I did make a couple of bracelets, and it was the first time that I had done beading, and I gave one to my aunt out on the reservation and then one to a friend. And I was like, oh yeah, I have done this before. But it does take a lot of patience, and it's not something that is easy. Sometimes we wish things would come easy, but they just don't. Things that are beautiful are worth it, and they just take a lot of time. But we do hope that you guys take time to work on your projects and to join us. Seriously, join us next week. Even if you didn't get enough time to do it or finish it or anything like that, please join us. We love your participation. Also, just to learn. And then we will have these videos available to you so that you can refer back to them and then, just kind of refresh, or as you're getting these projects done, we can hopefully help you to create your own. Let's see. Okay,
April,
I have a raised
access
hand.
the video?
Yeah, we'll send it through the email. We do have a raised hand, Mike. Would you like to say something?
Well, it's like I asked a question because I introduced myself that I was going to steal some ideas to try to mimic beading for our Title VI program.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're called check beads for youngers, or is that what they're called? And we have a lot of kindergarten first graders. Would you recommend starting with the bigger beads, or because I see these are the super small ones?
Yeah, for younger participants, I would start with pony beads. I wouldn't do loom work. I would just string them.
Okay.
It is a dexterity, like, is important when it comes to using this size of beads. And you could even do applique, one needle applique with bigger beads, probably down to size probably 8 or 9, which are significantly bigger. You still need a needle for them.
Right.
But they are significantly bigger, and I would bead something in a straight line on it. That's a whole different medium applique is. But for younger kids, I think our youngest is 9 or 10, and he learned how to bead on the loom over quarantine this last year.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if he was ready for it before that. So younger than that, it's probably less of the skill of beading and more of patterns and colors. It's almost like the Fruit Loop necklaces type of project you're probably going to do with younger than that.
Okay.
We've done that with our kids. So when I would get a beadwork project out, I would give them pony beads because I wanted them to get used to that motion of threading something, of putting colors together. And I think that helped. It was a stepping stone to getting to this next point when they were old enough to have that skill level.
Okay. All right.
Also,
thank you.
Oh,
Do you
sorry.
have any other advice for me?
Yeah, I just have one really
family
quick.
activities. We have kids with their parents coming. So
one other thing that when I was young and learning how to even do colors or patterns, it's really cool to get some graph paper and just have them color and make up their own patterns and stuff like that. So that's a good start as well.
I would also say, and I shared this with the other people, the other panelists, that it's really about relationships. Like nobody becomes a master beater in 2 or 3 or 4 hours. And so while that is the reason we're all getting together, or that's the reason why everybody is meeting in the same room, trying to do some things to create some relationships is really probably what is going to keep people participating in the future. And that's really, I think sometimes we forget. For example, my daughter hoop dances, and for a lot of the time, her participation was, oh, you make this formation, you make this image with this formation of hoops and whatnot. Well, what really invested her into hoop dancing was we had some sessions where we said, well, what idea do you want to express? What relationship do you have with hoop dancing that you want to express? And she started to explore that, and that really changed the way she thought about it. It wasn't just something she did anymore. It started to become something that she was. And that's really what will keep people going.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. So we have closed our polling. Thank you for all of those who have participated in the questions. Again, we will be here next week and on a Saturday. Erin will be hosting that one session. Let me go back to sharing. There's Erin. She's just so awesome. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Not as fancy as Alan Amanda Groves, but that's okay. All right, so just kind of to fall back on what they've been talking about with relationships and stuff like that. This is a Native Connections grant, and we want to support and help with prevention for suicide or for substance use. So here are some resources that we have. And we will be actually sending these to you guys through email so that you do have them as a reference. But we do have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is good not only just for suicide, but also for anything else, whether that's bullying or substance use, or if you just need to talk to somebody, if you're having like anxiety or just really struggling. And then if we ask that you download the Safe UT app, it's also a resource for suicide as well. And then we have these other resources. We Are Native is a really good web page to browse around, to look around for good resources that represent who we are as well. Also, the Trevor Project is for those who are LGBTQ+, or those who are allies of LGBTQ+, and who have questions or who are struggling with identity. And then we have here our resources for substance use. If those of you who have friends or want to know more about substances and how they affect your body, NIDA is a really good resource for teens. They have really cool videos and explanations on what drugs are, what they look like, what their street names are, what they do to your body. It's a really cool resource for family, friends, teens, or even teachers. Also, the National Helpline for SAMHSA is a 24-hour helpline, and it's open 365 days a year. They're there for any treatment or information services, both in English and in Spanish. So that's another good resource as well. So we will be providing these to you through email in the future. And then here, this is us. We're Red Mesa Behavioral Health. We're located at the Urban Indian Center as a part of the Urban Indian Center. These are our walk-in hours, and you can call anytime for screening Monday through Friday. And then again, the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake. We are located in Salt Lake City. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram. We also have an app. So feel free to download our app as well, and you will find a lot of information there as well. Again, thank you so much. Thank you, Alan Amanda Groves, for what you've taught us, and for just the ability to be able to relate that not only to the artistic part, but also to our mental health and to hopefully apply it in our lives. So thank you again. And thank you everybody else for joining us, and for those who are doing more than just watching and for looming and doing and putting in the work. Thank you so much. Let me see if I have any last minute chats. Yeah, so we just have a thank you so much for teaching. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we will see you guys next time. And then just like I really enjoyed the morning today, sitting here with you virtually, I'm going to continue beading. Thank you. Keep beading.
Bye, guys. See you
Bye.
next week. Bye.
Thank you.